Good morning, Ed here from Crystal Clear Aquatics, and this morning's job, which I'm going to share with you guys, is installation of an Oase filtral 9000 all-in-one pump, filter and UVC, and with the accessory, the fountain nozzle kit as well. Now this is a lovely little fiberglass pond. This is an old glass fibre Atlantis Blenheim pond. Very low stock of fish. I think there's sort of half a dozen Sarasacomets, Shubunkins in here, and they've had a few babies. But as you can see, the pond is pretty green. We've had pretty much 2 months of wall-to-wall sunshine this spring during lockdown, so very many ponds are having problems with green water and blanket weed. And it will be lovely to be able to see the fish and to get a bit of clarity in the water. Now currently this setup is utilising an old Oase Aquarius universal feature pump to provide water to this little bird bath over here. And the idea is that this is going, the statue is going to remain in place to act as a bit of architecture for the pond, but this pump is going to go and it's going to be replaced with the filtral, and rather than have water running over the sides of this feature, we're going to use the fountain nozzle kit and have a spray elsewhere. But most importantly, this is going to filter the water and it's keep it nice and clean and clear. So as you can see, it's pretty green at the moment. Look what I found. This is a lovely ramshorn snail. You don't often see these in ponds in my area. Quite sought after, and they're beautiful, beautiful creatures. They look just like a modern day ammonite. So it's lovely that they're still surviving quite happily in here. In fact, there's plenty in the pond. Look, there's 2 or 3 all over this calfa. Lovely. So tools for this job. This is a pretty basic affair, and there's not anything really specialist that's involved. Thankfully, the flex from the old pump has been routed through a conduit into the conservatory here on the house and then plugged in, so it's a nice simple affair of removing the old flex, attaching a string to this so I can pull that through the conduit, and then I can attach the new flex from this pump onto that string and then pull it back through the conduit. That's the plan anyway. If it doesn't work with the strings, I do have some flexible routing rods as well, but essentially I should be able to do this with some string, a little bit of electrical tape, a pair of scissors, screwdriver set, and a cup of coffee, and we'll get going. I'll show you what to do. Okay, so I've disconnected the plug, and I've now taped onto the end of the flex a length of very flexible string. Now when you're doing this, make sure you tape up all of the loose ends. I've gone over a good few inches of the flex, and I've also taped over a few inches of the string here, and I've made sure that there are no loose ends of cable sticking out. The bits of wire, I've got a horrible habit of snagging on some of the bends as you try to put it through. So this will hopefully ensure that the whole lot goes smoothly through the conduit and will allow me to get the string all the way through in one piece. Now something else you're going to have to be aware of when you're doing things like this is it's fantastic a conduit has been put into place, but obviously in aid of keeping it as neat and tidy as possible, the pipework has been attached with these 90-degree fittings. So we've got one over here, and then we had another one down here, and it's going to be very, very difficult to try and pull a string, and certainly impossible to get rods through when you've got these sort of angled fittings attached. You can just about pull a string through one. It's very difficult to try and pull a flex through 2. The amount of friction that it gets, particularly when it's dirty like this, you end up yanking and pulling the cable off of the string. So I've dug this down, expecting to find this, and sure enough I have. So I've disconnected the connector so that I can pull the string through via pulling on this bit of flex first. And once I've fed it through this first section, I'll then go to the pond where the flex is coming through here, and I will start to pull this section and feed the string through that last length running underground here. I'll reverse that process when I pull the flex back through. It's coming, he said. So that's the first section of string through. I can now start to pull from the pond side and get this through. I'll have to just help it along its way through this little elbow here. There we go, that's through there. There we go, we're through. So I can now remove the tape and the flex from the old pump, join on the flex to the new filtral, and then reverse this process, it's not going to be quite so easy pulling it back through, I'm sure, but we've done half the job at least. Now another little tip, apart from always keep your coffee close to hand, is to try and make sure that the new flex is as slim and the profile is as small as possible. And what I mean there is, it would be very easy with this new flex, which hasn't been cut or sort of spliced, to take the string directly onto this. But actually it would be much better if we can peel away the outer sheath as if we were preparing the cable, and having sort of 3 inches or so of the bare internal cables on show, which is going to be a lot slimmer than the full width of the cable and the core. And then we can tape the string onto that, so the tape combined with the string will end up a very similar sort of width to the original cable. If I put the string over this and tape over the top, we're going to end up quite a bit thicker than this flex, and it'll be a lot harder to get that through. So we'll just prep the cable very quickly. A couple of splits down in between the outer rubber sheath, and then you can pull it apart. Okay, you don't have to do quite as much as this, but we've got 10 meters of cable on here and only a 5 meter run, so I can afford to be generous. Now there's a sort of a powdery residue on this which needs to be wiped off to enable the tape to stick properly. That's important. But you can see now, by sticking the string and taping it over that, the overall width when I've finished isn't going to be any larger than the cable. Right, so there we go. I've taped up the new flex to the string. Again, no snags, no bits of cable left over which could snag on the way through. It's very important that you put a lot of tape around this. You want to make sure you do this in one go. It's disastrous if you're pulling and this comes away from the string sort of halfway through the conduit. You've then not got anything to pull all the way through. I mean, some people, as a precaution, particularly if you might be relaying cables in the future, would be to attach 2 strings to this, so that when you've pulled them through, you've got a spare string permanently in place in the conduit. In this particular application, I'm not going to do that, because actually it's a very short run and it's quite an easy job to feed cables through. If you do struggle to pull this through and there's a lot of resistance, you can lubricate the string and the flex. A bit of washing up liquid, a little bit of Vaseline, and that will help just to pull it through a little bit easier. Okay, so I've successfully pulled the string and the flex all the way through the conduit and relayed the new flex to the electrics from the filtral. So I'm just going to repair the ground and the hole and reconnect the fittings that I removed to get the cable through, and then I can start to put the filtral in the pond and connect together the fountain nozzle kit. So this is the new filtral. This is actually the second generation of the Oase filtral units, and there have been a few changes. The first, and I think probably the best change, is the outer casing and the cover. The old one, you used to have a couple of sort of plastic clips either side that you had to open apart, and then the cover would lift off. That wasn't so difficult, but trying to get it back together again was quite tricky when you were trying to locate those clips at the end, making sure the cable was in the correct position. You had a little plastic screen that used to get in the way. So this is nice and tidy, and what's great about it is that you don't have to disconnect any of the hosing or fountain nozzle attachments you might have on here, because the cover has been cut out to allow for removal without disengaging those bits and pieces. So that's pretty good. Inside we've got some open cell coarse foam, a finer open cell foam, so that's great just as the standard media. Gone are the old bags of gravel or sort of ballast, and instead we've got a nice ceramic media here, some super wax or similar. Very, very high surface area, fantastic biological filter media, so a really, really good media to have, and quite a good quantity to have in a small unit like this, so that's fantastic. And then you've still got some of these slightly bizarre plastic, I called them star baffles on my last video. I'm not quite sure what you would call them. They're designed to be media, I believe biological media, although I can't imagine there's a particularly high surface area on here compared to the foam and the ceramic media. But either way, they do certainly trap muck, because they always end up filling with debris, so they are efficient as a filter media. If you were replacing the UV tube, then the whole electronic ballast, UV tube, quartz sleeve and pump would just come out as one. Nice and easy, a little rubber grommet on there, and then you can disconnect. Again, you've got an arrow here, a lock and unlock, padlock emblem just to display which way to open. So very simple to get to that. So in all, I much prefer this generation of filtrals than the older. This is the biggest, this is the Filtral 9000, which has got the integrated 13 watt UV. For a pond of this volume, this is about 250 gallons-ish, or thereabouts. 13 watts will be more than enough, and it will be a realistic size system to ensure that this is kept clear for, you know, all season without any fuss, really. Now this is the fountain nozzle kit, which is an additional accessory for this. It's a shame Oase don't include this as part of the kit. I think it would be nice to. You know, you're paying a premium as it is. However, for about an extra 20 quid-ish, you can pick this up, and this has got a threaded double outlet here, so that you can incorporate a riser pipe for a fountain, and you can still then include a hose tail to attach some hose if you wanted to do a different feature. We've got a couple of different accessories in here. We've got some different nozzles. What have we got here? Let's see. So we've got here kind of a traditional fountain spray, traditional fountain rose. We've got what looks like, we can remove this, and we're going to have the mushroom jet, all that sort of, you know, dome of water. And we've also got an unusual fountain with one central column of water and then some spray sort of coming off to one side. What I love about units like this is you've got an articulated joint, so if you haven't got a stable level base to your pond, which will mean your fountain's going to be on the P a little bit, if you excuse the expression, with this articulated elbow you can move this into the correct level position and then lock it down, so that's really, really useful. There we go, so we can lock that into position to ensure we've got a nice level fountain. This is also a telescopic riser, so we can pull this up and gain about an extra 5 or 6 inches, which is always good. So I'm going to set this up. Now personally, I'm not really a fan of fountains at all. I find that fountain nozzles tend to clog. You know, you're forever taking the nozzle off, cleaning around the outer rim. You get one spray shooting up 6 feet in the air and then some smaller sprays dribbling around the side. And that's just inevitable with a fountain. But if you take the nozzles off and you allow the water to discharge through the pipe and ensure that the riser is just an inch below the surface of the pond, it creates this quite nice sort of frothy, foamy effect, a bit reminiscent of the quite expensive lava jet fountain nozzles or the foam jet nozzles. But you can do that and create a similar effect with a lovely noise, much cheaper, just by taking the nozzle off. And the benefit of that is you've got great aeration in the pond. You haven't got anything too high which the wind's going to catch and, you know, ends up spraying out of the pond and causes you issues with the pond draining. You're not going to have any issues with trying to level this per se, and there's nothing to block, which is I think you know, a great addition to something like that. But I'll set it up and I'll show you the various different features that it includes. So having put this in the pond, I can say unfortunately the pond is too shallow for me to be able to drop this down to have the fountain nozzle just below the surface of the water. So instead I'm going to have to leave the riser pipe sitting slightly proud like this. Now if I wanted to, I could cut this down and to create that frothy effect that I was mentioning before, but in doing so I'm going to cut off the threaded section at the top here, which allows me to add other accessories to the unit, and that's a little bit too sort of permanent for me. So we're going to leave it like this. Again, not running that fountain nozzle on top means there's nothing to clog, nothing to block. It's going to be a lot less maintenance, and there's still a nice sound and a nice little bit of aeration and agitation here on the pond. Something to be careful of is our water lilies don't like too much disturbance, too much splashing water on the leaves. Movement's not too bad, it tends to be really the water and the splashing on the leaves that they really don't like. So I've just moved those baskets slightly away either side just to create a little bit of space between them and the fountain. But we'll leave this running. I'd like to think in about 2 weeks' time the pond will show some really good signs of improving. and I'll pop back and take some pictures and some video of the pond to show these improvements. Well, that's today's install complete. Thank you very much for watching. If you do like it, please like and subscribe. I'm not affiliated with Oase in any way, but I'm always very keen to use their kit. It's very reliable, robust equipment. As a tradesman myself, I always want to make sure that I'm using equipment which is reliable and which isn't going to cause me any headaches in the future. So I can highly recommend the Oase pieces of equipment. Filtral in this particular application for a small pond is going to be fantastic. Literally drop it in, plug and play. So a great piece of kit. I'll come back in a couple of weeks' time to see how the pond is looking and video that as well. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Ed, the Crystal Clear Aquatics.